Hello everybody, you are coming you from a creative arts and culture harbor of Estonia, creative center of Estonia in Tallinn, and this is the e-health conference of Estonian presidency at the European Union, and we continue now with one-on-one discussions. My first question is from Wales, a lawyer and the e-health expert, Mr. Bledon Rees. You just told the conference about the task force to lay it on the e-health topics. What exactly your task force managed to do?
So we're looking at the legal framework for the delivery of free flow of health data and second use. So it's what can we do in a legal context to facilitate that free flow of data across Europe.
How much hurdles you have to kind of overcome before this free flow becomes reality? We heard Estonian former president, Mr. Ilves, yesterday. He said that it took 5 years to overcome some hurdles between Estonia and Finland to share the prescriptions. That starts next May, but we are looking at the whole continent. The legal framework, that's a very difficult hurdle.
But it doesn't have to be. So I'm a passionate believer that law can be a force for good, that regulation can be a force for good. It doesn't have to be about stopping things happening, it can be about facilitating things happening. The problem is that the European Union has no power to harmonize health laws so that national health systems become insular. They are not leveraging the global learning, the global business environment. So the idea is to create an international treaty, a convention that allows countries to start to harmonize, if they so choose, some of the fundamental rights around data for citizens and patients, and to facilitate then that flow of data for the benefit of individuals and society as a whole.
So our dream is to have a Europe where you can get a prescription in Estonia and fill it, let's say, in Spain.
Yes, but that's only part of the dream. The idea is that the future of healthcare, making health systems sustainable, is about using data. It's about learning from data, whether that's developing new services, whether it's about research and understanding the causes of disease, but it's also about enriching the understanding by adding, if you like, data from smart cities, data that isn't purely healthcare, and then learning from that to develop systems that are patient-centric, people-centric, that keep people well. It's about well-being as much as it's about disease. But the fundamental driver of this is data and the flow and use of that data.
We hear about a lot of goodwill in Europe about becoming e-health continent. But how much skepticism there still is in Europe about the free flow of data, about having the data available, accessible on internet rather than on papers. So how much skepticism you have to overcome? In Estonia, we are kind of convinced that this is the future. The future is already here. But in some parts of Europe, it's not that.
And that's a very fair point. And the, if you like, the contrast between countries in Europe about how advanced they are, but also their citizens and their understanding of digital. So the more that a country is digitally enabled, its public services like Estonia, the easier it is just to see digital health delivering every day of the week. In countries that are still primarily paper-based, then the challenges are greater. But the key to this is communication. It's about explaining to people what the benefits are of the use of data and its transfer in a very practical way. So not just about research, but actually how is it going to help you, your mother, your father, get the services that they need in the most convenient manner. And once people understand the limitations on paper, the benefits from the digital enabling health work system, the quicker people will buy into it. And that's the whole concept behind the Digital Health Society. This is something that for you and I, for our children, our parents, it just makes sense. Well, why wouldn't you do this? And whilst there are concerns that people have, that's entirely understandable, but these concerns can be addressed in terms of the latest security that's around for digital. but also understanding that some of these concerns exist with paper systems. You know, I gave as examples paper breaches by healthcare systems, which are just as prevalent. So sometimes this is what I would call a worried well syndrome, that actually the people who are ill, you'll publish your entire medical record, for example, online, because you're looking for a solution that gives you a good night's sleep, that reduces the pain that you suffer. So the reality is that there's a big disconnect between the people who are well, who are worried, and actually the people who are ill, who will definitely want some of these systems now.
Thank you very much for this insight. We hope that this conference is a good vehicle to kind of deliver this message to Europeans that this is our future, and we are actually have to be optimistic about this future, not worry about this future. Have a good conference and have a good stay in town.
Thank you very much.
Just 1 second. I have to inform our viewers online that our conversations will continue here at the Creative Hub in Tallinn, and in a second my colleague and the co-moderator Näkki from Finland will take over.
Felicitas Riedel, how can European Investment Bank help to enhance investments in this digital health environment?
I think thanks a lot, first of all, for allowing me to speak here. What I would like to inform the audience is that we have several ways of supporting the sector. So first of all, we also are a bank, so we provide loans into the sector. So we give money that needs to be repaid at a certain stage, so we are not about subsidizing the sector. However, we have a range of financial instruments that cover not only small-sized or medium-sized companies, so in the private sector, but we also support the large infrastructure projects, which can be hospitals that also use digital health equipment, but it can also be the related IT infrastructure that is needed, but also the development of innovative software that also is necessary in order to implement a digital health strategy.
Can you elaborate, give an example on how you have succeeded in helping out this investment and development of the field?
I think a good way to illustrate it is maybe to give an example of a Finnish startup company that is called New Icon. That's a robotics company that is specialized on providing hospital pharmacies with digital pharmacy that can avoid mistakes. So if a physician at the ward does a prescription, it is automatically sorted in the hospital pharmacy. So therefore you avoid human mistakes, and that's also a way of digitalization. It was a small company and we provided an 8 million loan to this company, so it's quasi-equity risk, but it had a tremendous impact because it also signalized to the company, we think it's the business model is valid, it's financially sound, so I think there was quite some signaling effect. And that also helped the company to provide its capex, but also its R&D strategy to move forward. Another project can be a large hospital infrastructure where we have also seen, first of all, with the medical simulation, where we also see a stronger impact now that medical students are now being trained with robots, more or less, in order to not only anatomy-related facts, but also case studies, where you have patients being mimicked by robots, and then it is tested whether or not the students will get the right diagnosis out of them. So their IT also plays a major role. But also what we see is that in our hospital infrastructure projects, the IT component is increasing, meaning that digital solutions are becoming more important, that also within a hospital, you ensure that once a patient enters at every single ward, at every single destination, people know, okay, blood has already been taken while being at this examination, or this x-ray has been done, and physicians everywhere have access to it.
How do you think different companies or hospitals have found your financial instruments at the European Investment Bank?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the question.
How accessible do you think European Investment Bank is to different startups, hospitals, companies who are looking for funding for these projects?
I think we are generally accessible, but what we realize is that many people are not aware of what type of instruments we have. EIB is still perceived as a large infrastructure bank, which from historical perspective we have been, but also in recent years we have had new financial instruments. It started with the risk-sharing finance facility, but also under INNOFIN, EIB was able to accept what we consider higher risk projects, which also opened the market to mid-cap or smaller sized companies. And also now under the Juncker plan or with FC guarantee, we are also to provide more risk capital, but I also want to keep it in perspective. We are still a bank, so even though I mentioned risk, it still needs to be put into perspective. So we need to do an assessment, and there still needs to be a bankable project where we see the possibility, but we are sure or certain that we can get the money back.
And who can apply to your funding?
I think in essence, if you have a project, so what is necessary, or maybe, let me step one back. EIB is not providing financing for a company per se. Even though de facto it's a balance sheet funding, we need to link our funding with a project. This project needs to fulfill EU objectives. So therefore, we need to make sure that what we support is in the interest of the EU. What is relevant for a digital health is that it is important that knowledge economy, so driving innovation, is one of the key priorities, but also supporting key infrastructure and also digitalization. So once you are within these certain key priorities and you have a project of above, or investment need of above 15 billion euros, we are happy to discuss. And also I would encourage people to just approach us, and then we can figure out together whether or not this would be an eligible project or not.
Felicitas Riedel from the European Investment Bank. How would you describe the digital healthcare field at the moment for investments or for development from your point of view?
I think that's difficult to say, because as I work in the public and the private sector, there are different dynamics. What we face in the public sector is that there are financial constraints. Access to long-term financing is not available, so therefore this is often seen as a showstopper to implement long-term strategic projects, while in the private sector we see a big strive for innovative ideas that are brought to the market. And we see it a little bit also as our task to link these two sides and to ensure that some of these innovations are really brought to the attention to the right people.
Felicitas Riedel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And our next guest is Mr. Jaan Piirsalu from Tallinn Technical University. You are studying cybersecurity issues. How big is this concern in Europe about the security of the data in the cyberspace that regards people's health?
Quite big, and the Nordic countries and the southern countries, they are in the different positions. We think that data should be used, and there are some people who say actually that the confidentiality of the data should be preserved to the limit that data is not processed.
So you see Nordic countries and the Southern Europe. So the Southern Europe is still going on the old
Not
ways.
exactly, but I would say that the Anglo-Americans also believe this way, like the southern countries. So this belief that data could be processed is just in the Nordic countries, I would say.
We see cyber attacks and cyber hacks all the time in the world. What makes you confident that this would not happen to the health data?
It has been happening to the health. If you are reading the news, then ransomware attacks have been actually hitting the hospitals also. But what I think about it is that the most important property of the data is integrity, and now we have the technology that can provide the integrity in the large scale, and this thing is called blockchain.
We don't have much time to discuss the blockchain. It's a rather complicated system, but in few words, what is the blockchain?
Blockchain,
if it's possible to briefly describe it.
Okay, analogy is like it's waving the tie. You are taking the fabrics that are composed of the relations are composed of the hashes, and then you are waving them together to create one big and very, very strong structure.
And what is the main aim of your research now? What are you focusing? The blockchain, and what is your contribution to this health discussion?
No, actually, I'm researching the use of it in the cyber range and in the critical infrastructure.
The use of
blockchain and timing in the critical infrastructure.
So when people want to know more about blockchain, where they can go on internet to read about it?
When internet is full of these descriptions, and I would say that Wikipedia is pretty good start.
So just type in the word blockchain and you find some research. But in the end, to sum it up, how secure is our data today on internet?
It depends where. I believe that it's secure enough that we can run our systems.
Depends where? Depends on the country, or?
Depends on the level of the maintainers, how well they are doing the security. And in Estonia we have this baseline security standard, so I would say that in Estonia it's pretty good.
So we are kind of leading the way in that field too.
Yes.
Thank you very much and have a good conference.
Thank you.